Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 4 of Prometheus Podcast. My name is Landon Wade. I'm here with Sean Ju.
Hey.
And Colin Burns.
Howdy.
And today we've got a pretty sweet topic for you. I think this is going to be a really good discussion. We're going to talk...
All?
What?
Aren't they all?
Yeah, they're definitely all good. I mean, this one's going to be... I think we've got a really good discussion lined up for you. We're going to discuss a little bit of money and elitist theory / culture involved with that. So Colin and Sean are going to run us through kind of the historic piece of that, how that applies in our world today, what's happening with us, and then we'll take that back to architecture. So, but like we've started doing from episode 2, we're going to start with our day in the life segment, talking about what's going on this week in architecture schools. Who wants to start with that? Sean's going to start with that one.
We have a review coming up on Monday for our site mapping. And if anybody's wondering what an architectural review is, it's not studying for an exam. It's actually a showcase of the works that you've done previous to that review, and by having random reviewers and your professor review the work that you have, you can gain further knowledge and know what to fix on the work that you have currently. And we're doing that Monday, and I don't have any work.
Yeah.
Well, didn't you miss Monday?
I missed Monday and Wednesday. I already have 2 absences. Yes, I do.
Yeah, so typical situation for reviews is most people have put off stuff, or it's kind of the time when people really start to catch up because there actually is a deadline there for your presentation. So you've got to have all your work ready, and then you present it to faculty members, professors that probably haven't even seen your work before. So it's pretty nerve-wracking for some people. But there's some other stuff going on. So we've continued to work on our site models, which are what we talked about them last time. They're those kind of replicas of the land that we're going to build on for our projects. Those are supposed to be complete by Monday for most people, but we'll see how that goes because of the teamwork and how that usually works. But
oh yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's pretty much it. What else? Is there anything else we're doing right now in architecture school that's...
No. Yeah, just preparing for those reviews on Monday. So really, everybody's just trying to hone in and get precise down what they have and make it look the best that it can.
Yeah, and then we're also getting ready for a site visit. So we don't have that much on our plate right now, but I mean things are coming up. They'll keep us busy. Yeah,
that's the other thing. We are organizing. We're getting ready to visit our site, which is in El Paso. So this semester our project is set in El Paso. We're actually designing a hypothetical building that will be set on the border between El Paso and Juarez. So that's a pretty interesting project. So that's I think one of the critical reasons that they're having us talk about the site and turn in a lot of work beforehand, so that we have a lot of ideas prepared for the real situation.
Well, so we can go there and know where we're at.
Exactly.
Instead of like last time where it was we were all pretty much going in there pretty blind.
Yeah. So last semester we went to Denver, and that ended up being a pretty that was a discovery experience, to say the least, for not only the students but most of the professors. It was a pretty
hectic.
Yeah, it was hectic. That was a crazy trip, but we did learn a lot. I mean, we got to know the city really well. That was a fun trip too, because we were on public transportation most of the time, really getting in.
Yeah, that was a fun trip.
The city. So yeah, that's kind of where we're headed next week. If we're lucky, we'll be broadcasting or posting from El Paso.
Live in El Paso.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be great. So we'll be in El Paso. We'll be able to spit across the border pretty much, and we'll be talking to you from there. So that will be our next episode. That'll be pretty interesting. So without further ado, we can kind of get into our discussion now about money and elitist culture, those types of things. Now, for those of you that don't know, one of the dynamics of our group, and part of the reason I think we can have such good, thick, contextual conversations because Colin and Sean are both actually really educated in history, and they both remember a lot of stuff. I am not one to remember a lot, especially regarding history. So they're going to kind of give us a run through regarding, kind of historically the role of money and the development into the situation that we're in today, things like that. So.
Well, I mean, I honestly don't know where to start.
Well, let's start
elite.
with the definition of elitist, what we think of it today, and then we can work from the beginning to that.
Well, I mean, the top 1%, top 0.1%.
All right. Well, what puts you in that top 1%?
I think it has a lot to do with money to begin with. I think that has to be the given.
Yeah.
And then comes the power and the attitude.
Yeah. I would say the biggest part is money and attitude. That sort of attitude that they have, that they are better and deserve better than everybody else below them.
Which partly I think they're right, but I mean, I could be wrong. But historically, the elites were sort of untouchables before the discovery of democracy. Well, the modern day democracy with the founding of America and the Constitution.
Yeah.
They were
monarchs, dictatorship.
In ancient history, they were the people that served the gods that they believed in. They were the people that were doing all these ceremonies to make it rain or do things.
Especially in the ancient Aztec culture. They played both the part of king and priest.
Yeah. They were the gods themselves. And then it came to be the elites then transferred to be people that were born with that title. The barons, the dukes, people that normal people cannot be, no matter how hard they try. They were the elites with the beginning and the end until the end of the monarchy. And then in the democracy, well, the whole point of democracy is that everybody gets an equal shot, no matter who you are. And so you can't be born with a title that separates you from other people. Now, of course, a lot of people will argue, well, what about the people that are born with rich parents? They're born with rich parents. I mean, you can't really blame them for being born with rich parents. They just are. But it's not like they have a title on them that separates them from any rights that we don't have. So I think the elites now are the people with money. People who, regardless of being born with it or having earned his or her way into it, I think the money has to be the given. Money and the power. And then comes the attitude. I think that's more of a historical context when it comes to the word elite and the elitist.
Yeah. I feel the attitude part has come more towards the modern day term of elitist.
I think so too.
Yeah, so part in preparation, we were talking about this topic of the elitist and things like that, and part of the difficulty I was having with it is my historical knowledge is a lot less than that of Colin or Sean. So they're saying elitist, and I'm like, well, yeah, like somebody who thinks they are the best, they are an elitist. And so while that, that's the definition I've adopted or come to understand throughout my life, but here we're referring mostly historically to what an elitist is. And so kind of what Sean was talking about is really someone who is born into that amount of fame or power, I guess, whether that's due to money or a title. Mm-hmm. And where that sits today, and I guess money is a whole other discussion if we're going to focus more on the elitist stuff right now, right?
Yeah.
And money is definitely something we're going to have a whole podcast about that.
We're trying to water down a little bit from how we talk about it every day to how we should put it out on the air.
Yeah, we've really spent hours talking, specifically about money and religion, all these kind of thicker topics. And so right now we're really trying to keep it succinct, talking just about elitist and that sense of the word elitist. We could talk about, my sense of the word elitist definitely in some other podcast. But right now, the elitist being that one with power, the money and power, having inherited that, whether that's a title or money. So how does that today in the world's context, what does that look like to you guys?
I think of elites, like individual elites, as an X factor in the society, because they're the ones who have the money and the power to change things single-handedly themselves. When ordinary people want to do it, they need to get the numbers behind it. But these people, the elite, the so-called elites of the modern day society, don't need that. They can do it themselves. And I think that's what really separates the elites from the ordinary people, is that are you able to do these things without needing a large amount of number or any kind of support.
Well, that being said, the amount of power that elites have can also be used not just to do whatever they want, but in occasions they can do things that even are contrary to local laws or commercial practices. There are a lot of and not even, I guess, local laws, but like morally there's some really like nasty business practices that happen just because people have money and power, and just because they can, they do. And that's the unfortunate thing that I've seen from the elitist culture in a lot of areas, is they, it's not just that they have the power, they want more, and so they use that to acquire more and more when they already have a ton of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just go back to the days of the Industrial Revolution, the forced child labor and the lack of any sort of health care system in the society to the workers.
I wouldn't say it was forced child labor.
Well, I mean, it was basically...
It was... They gave children the option to enlist themselves in labor, but it wasn't forced.
I think it was more of a society that kind of forced them into, because...
We also have to look at the wage gap difference. They were almost... Technically, you could call it forced child labor laws, because the wages that parents made forced children to work because they didn't have enough money with just the parents alone working. Mm-hmm. But granted, we've come a long way since then.
Well, yeah, now we have labor laws that I can't even count how many.
Yeah,
unions, which aren't as great anymore.
Is that unions? I think unions kind of shot themselves in the foot a couple of times, and I think that's why they're not as powerful anymore.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's a conversation that we can have later.
Yeah.
I don't think that has anything to do with the elite system. It definitely did help them, if anything.
Well, I would say the elite, that could bring into a conversation of the elitists. Like, you and me have had this conversation since the start of the semester, talking about elitist of Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Morgan.
Yeah.
And this idea of trust and monopolies. And that time, elitist was money bought power and control. You could change anything to government officials to elections with money.
The three people that he mentioned, Rockefeller, Carnegie,
and JP
Morgan, they basically set up the presidency for a couple of presidents in the United States history.
1896 McKinley and Bryant election.
Yeah.
So it was, well, I mean, of course it was back then when the idea of monopoly and full control wasn't as restricted, feared in the society as much. But still, I think that really showcases how much control that the elites can have if they aren't limited to some sort of a law or a code or
boundaries
or an ordinance. Yeah.
Interesting. So Sean's arguing for morals right now.
I mean, no, but this has something to do with the law. I think law needs to change to where people's morals go.
Yeah,
and that's why we have amendments, which amendments are bound.
Yeah,
it's a changing law.
Yeah, interesting. So what would y'all consider a modern day elitist, or who or what company or
Paris Hilton?
Paris Hilton. Okay.
The Hiltons have one of the world's biggest hotel management systems.
I would say Bill Gates.
I don't know if Bill Gates would be the one that I would argue against. Bill Gates, I mean, he's done some philanthropic work, and he hasn't really shown the negative side of the elitist.
But he's still an elitist.
Philanthropy. Well, I mean, what about...
He has the qualities that I would like to expect from all the elitists.
Yeah.
But again, you also have to picture the elitist quality and way of life is way different than everybody else. I feel like in an elitist world of business and living, it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world where you have to fight to survive, to stay at the position that you're
I don't think anybody gets there without having to put some dirt on their hands, because it gets way more difficult as you climb up.
Well, that's the thing I find interesting is, like, the more the more, quote unquote elite or the more financially powerful you get, I think the risk of having to get your hands dirty is just way higher, because like money starts, in my experience at least, for what I've seen, money ends up corrupting at some of the strongest of characters.
The famous quote, "Absolute power corrupts absolutely." So?
It's true though.
I don't think that it corrupts. I just think from experiences that I've had with people that come into money that didn't have money or slowly began to have money, they'd never experienced that much power before, and they don't know how to control it, and they don't know what to do with it.
That's a really good point.
And it causes them to make irrational decisions.
Yeah. I don't think it corrupts as more. I think of it as more.
I think it misguides.
No, not even misguided. I think it's a compromise. Like, one has to make a compromise.
The money or the owner.
Yeah, the money or their morals, really. And honestly,
well, who's to say? You don't have to choose. Bill Gates, again, is a very rare but a prime example. He has morals and has money.
He is, but also he did.
Granted, his morals aren't the finest.
He did have a lot of luck going into it, and.
Well, you also got to think about it, though.
I wouldn't say it was luck. He was original.
No, he was, but he was lucky to be born in those days when that idea could be original.
Yeah.
And they had the technology to support his idea into come to reality.
Well, when you think about it,
people in that case, with what you just said, people are always going to say people that invent the next thing are going to be lucky.
I'm not trying to argue that everybody's lucky.
Yeah.
Everyone that's rich are lucky, but you do need some sort of a luck.
Well, yeah, I can agree with you on some accord.
And once you start running out of luck, and some people are just going to be luckier than others, but once you start running out of luck and you want to stay and you want to keep your position, then I think you need to start making compromises. And I think that's when people sort of perceive that situation as being corrupted.
Well, I think Colin's point gave me an interesting perspective. It's just that, when people come into a lot of money, they inherit it, for example, or it wasn't a very gradual thing. That's power they don't really know how to control. So it's less a matter of corruption and more its inability. And then on the other hand, the reason we know the intimate details of people's lives when they have a lot of money is because of the fame and power that comes with it. And so that's, I think, works for both the good and bad of the elitist culture, is the fact that they are on the spotlight because they have so much money and power. People look to them, whether that's with fear or with fear or envy or caution, however you may want to say it. It's that amount of power is just really, it's a scary thing. To have to let somebody else around you have. And so that's, I think, part of the reason our culture pays so much attention to those people that do have a lot of money, that are elitist.
Yeah, and I had this, and about going back to like Monopoly stuff, I mean, Monopoly is not as prevalent nowadays as it was back then, but still, there's still sort of, how do I say it?
It's not a monopoly, but a controlled market.
Yeah.
By certain companies.
I mean, honestly, you buy any kind of sort of headache relief.
Yeah.
And you're either gonna get the GSK or Bayer.
True.
I mean, those two are really superpowers in that pharmaceutical department.
Or toothpaste.
Yeah, toothpaste. Johnson & Johnson controls most of the toiletry and whatevers. And I mean, there's a lot of control there. Like Coke and Dr. Pepper Company controls most of the soda market.
They really do, though, and it's intimidating. I saw this while I lived in Brazil. There's a brand in Brazil. It's called Antarctica. That's like the soda brand, kind of like Coke,
Mm-hmm.
And there were times there. What's the story? They have a soda that's like the most popular. Like anybody that's been to Brazil knows this. It's called Guaraná. It's the name of this soda. It's kind of like, it's like a cider type thing, but it's like little red fruits. Anyway, it's super good. And Coke comes in and offered to buy the whole company because Coke can do that. And the company, they said no. So what does Coke do? They end up setting up shop like right next to this company and fabricating like the exact same soda as them. And where they could, they bought them out.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
straight up, they bought them out, and where they couldn't, they'd set up shop right next to them.
Yeah, that's just to showcase that sort of elitist, money is power kind of.
Yeah, and that happens in the United States.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
Pepsi, Coke, Mellow Yellow, Mountain Dew.
Yep.
I mean, all those
them
things are
offering to buy you out is the nice way of doing it. The not nice way is them destroying you slowly.
Well, I mean, it's sort of a last offering. Just like you sell your company, or we're gonna buy it. We're gonna buy it at a dirt cheap price when you go down.
Well, and that no wonder people pay attention to big companies because of that reason.
Yeah.
Like they have enough power to just walk up to you and say, you know, either we'll buy your life, you know, or your livelihood, or
and I mean,
we'll destroy it.
Of course, Coca-Cola Company does have a very aggressive marketing tactics.
They really do, though.
But I mean, I think this is a really good transition that we can make to architecture. I don't think architecture firms have that kind of aggressiveness in their marketing tactics.
I disagree. So my father, for those of you that don't know, or this is your first episode you've heard, my dad's an architect. He did a lot of business in Colorado for a while, and there was a business there. So my dad was had, at most, I think at one point my dad had 8 employees. It was still a small business, but it was a decent size
firm. That's not too bad.
These other guys, they had, I think, up to 30, and their firm would call my dad's clients after he had a meeting with them and would offer them the same product for cheaper. Yeah, and they were cutthroat.
Well, yeah.
But luckily, because of, I don't know if there's a correlation in this, but because they had that type of business practice, their architecture sucked, man. And that was the worst part, is my dad did lose clients to these people.
Well, I mean,
and
this is where that compromise comes in.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do you want to build something that's meaningful and pretty pricey, or, I mean, because if you're going to offer them cheap prices, that means you're giving up on something design wise.
Well, and in addition, I think the fact that, if somebody is that, I don't want to say immoral, because you could argue that practice for them was totally logical business wise. For me as a businessman, I don't think that's the best approach. But you could argue that if somebody, when it comes to business and money, if they're not acting with good morals or with courtesy towards others, what does that say about their dedication and their morals regarding what they actually do? So regarding architecture in this case, what did that say about it? So I think that's kind of how the correlation's made.
But I mean,
Colin's sighing. He's like,
I think architecture is one of those fields that is, I feel a little different in that regard of this term of elitist architecture. In elitist architecture, you pay for what you get. Whatever you put in to that architect is what you're going to get out. And I feel like in the elitist category, if I was to go to, granted, she's dead, Zaha Hadid, and ask her to design me a building, she's an elitist architect. If I ask her to design me a building, she's going to design me a great building, and it's going to be expensive.
Real expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, now you would think, oh, well, some companies, these big, powerful companies like to cut corners. I feel like architecture is one of those things. If you want to be an elitist architect, you don't cut corners. You want to milk the cow dry of every dollar you can.
I mean, there's a reason why Zaha Hadid's most of her projects are in the national level, because I think that's the only way that they could ever afford that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because at the same time we're talking about Zaha Hadid, or these
like Frank Gehry, Gensler,
these huge architects that are well known even to the civilian world, non-architecture people. At the same time, we have these big superpowers that are elite. There are also the elite that really, I think, are more... Okay, so let's compare Zaha Hadid, these guys, to a custom product market, maybe,
Yeah.
Whereas you have the other end of the spectrum, which you have the Targets and Walmarts type firms.
Yeah, Zaha Hadid's kind of like the Bentleys.
Yeah. Zaha Hadid is like Bentleys, and then you've got these other guys that are like Toyotas.
The GMC, the Ford.
Yeah. And these guys, their architecture is really not special at all. They do cut corners, but they do it for so dang cheap that they make a freaking crap ton of money.
They do it so cheap you can't pass it.
No.
Well, it's interesting.
I think it's a smart business, like business-wise. I think it's a very smart business tactic.
But if you look at like architecture is one of those things. Yeah, you can think about it business-wise, but architecture has a certain connection to people that you can't just rely on the business. It has an emotional attachment to people.
It does, but
to treat it like a business is to get rid of that emotional attachment. And when you get rid of the emotional attachment, it's no longer architecture. It's contracting or business, like building design. It's not you having a creative process to create this space that people emotionally get excited about. And I feel like that's what has, kind of changed architecture from what it used to be to what it is now.
I mean, as an architect, I have to agree with that. But
exactly,
as
an architect,
there's a reason why we're fighting the cookie cutter market as the minorities.
Right.
That's why there's a reason why architects are that like little one small resistance to the big cookie cutter market out there.
We're trying to fight the Fords, and the Chevys and the GMs
and the Bentleys at the same time.
Yeah, but I mean it's logical and it's what I would do if I was a businessman.
Yeah. Well, because the thing is, as architects, we understand what Colin was saying about the emotional, how architecture actually does affect people, and I think we even referred a little bit to this in our first episode, is just the fact that it's like people a lot of times don't even perceive it.
No.
So all you have to do is sit there and like really pay attention to your space for a while, and you'll start to understand what we're talking about. Is the fact that like it does affect you. And the architecture around us does affect us. I think personally, when I think of an architecture elites, I think of more of an attitude than money.
Yeah.
When it comes to architecture, I think it's more about the attitude.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's because if you don't have the attitude in architecture, then you're going to come up with bland things. And you're going to be just like one of those people.
Unless you're a good businessman.
I think he's referring to like attitude more in the terms of creativity.
Yeah.
And your ability to produce.
Yeah, if you don't
design.
have that individuality in your work, well, that starts from one's attitude towards things.
Like, let's put it into this perspective, like this sort of cookie cutter design where they get rid of the attitude or creativity. You can walk into somebody's house. I've done this plenty of times. I've had friends' houses I walk into and just go, oh, it's another house, and I've had friends that have custom built homes, and I walk into their house and just go, holy, oh my lord, like wow,
Close call.
Like I have a friend that you walk in his front door and it's 45 feet to the ceiling.
Holy crap!
It's a dome. The top of his ceiling is part of a dome.
Your friend's living
and
in a chapel.
he's got a grand staircase in his house. Like, it creates this excitement. Granted, he probably doesn't take the same appreciation to it as I do, coming from a background of this is what we do day to day in school. We study these things, we practice these things, but still, I feel like as soon as you lose that attitude or creativity, it no longer is elitist at that point. Because I feel like the whole point of architecture being elitist, it should have this emotional attachment that people feel excited or they feel like they belong to it.
And part of the reason why I said when I think of architecture elites, I think of the attitude, is because you're never going to really win that battle. If you're going in there with an attitude towards someone who only cares about money, 99 times out of 100, you're not going to win that battle.
No, it's true.
But, I mean, it's the attitude that's driving them into that 99% loss battle. I think that's really what makes architecture.
Is that fight?
Yeah.
That they really are sacrificing, in a lot of cases, sacrificing a good sum of money for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to like paint heroic pictures of architects fighting. I mean, I know there are some asshole architects.
I think it's heroic.
But I think that attitude is what really makes the elite architects. It's because Zaha Hadid did her designs that way to make a difference.
It's true.
Frank Gehry did too, and so did Frank Lloyd Wright. He wanted they all. If you look up any great architects, modern day, classical day architects, they're there to make changes.
True.
And it doesn't matter how many people have tried; they pulled it off, and that's why they're in the history book. And
I feel like today nobody's willing to make a change. We're all willing to compromise to fit into society because we don't want to drown.
Yeah,
but I feel like the first person to successfully start that change will be, again, somebody that goes down in a textbook as a great architect.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of however many architects there were in the history of mankind, and we're third-year architecture students. We've taken 3 history classes, and we know about how many.
Who was it? Frank Gehry failed.
Yeah.
What did he failed a studio class in college?
Yeah.
You know, and he still goes down as a great architect. So
we know about 50 architects out of millions that have failed.
Well, I think what ends up happening in the market concerning elitists is either you are an elitist in the money sense, and occasionally, yeah, you probably have an elitist in the money sense that creates good architecture. Mm-hmm. But typically, elitists in the money sense are those that they're cash cows. So they're just going for the cheap projects that they can build cheap. That's not typically very appealing architecture.
The most profit out of.
Or you have the elitist in attitude, which are those who will sacrifice almost everything for the good. Well, maybe not the good, but for the morals of architecture. You know.
Yeah. And this is what I was talking about when I said at one point people are going to have to make that compromise between money and morals.
Yeah.
And people who choose morals,
I feel like the people that choose the morals get written in history books. People that choose money, might live a more luxurious life, but they don't get remembered.
And that's the struggle, because I know me personally, like, I want to be famous. You know, I want my name to be right up there with Renzo Piano and Zaha Hadid.
Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
But that's the thing, is like I want to be famous, but I've chosen to live a life like I have a family. I'm gonna have a family soon. You know, I'm gonna have a wife, and eventually we're gonna and we're gonna end up having kids, and like so. And I saw this growing up all the time. As much as my dad wanted to be the stalwart, stand up for the morals of architecture architect, there were times that he to provide for the family.
Yeah,
had to make that call, you know, like you said. So that's the hard thing, is because the two elites we're talking about, the elites with money and the elites of attitude, start spreading this market out. So the middle is kind of slim pickings sometimes, because it's either, you know, most people will go to one or the other. Because if they have money, they go to somebody who will design something awesome.
I think the best comparison to that is just the modern politics. People in the middle people in the middle get left out. They don't win elections. I mean, one can say that they're fighting for their real morals, for what they really believe in, but they're not going to get elected to any kind of office. I mean, once in a blue moon, you'll see them get elected for a House seat, but
no, it's totally true.
Yeah,
it's totally true. Because I remember that with last election, we talked about candidates, and there were some really what I thought were like well balanced candidates, not one side or the other.
Not going to mention any names.
Yeah, we're not.
Please.
Yeah, because I know. But like there was some that I thought seemed like really legit candidates, and it was just like they, you know, no chance.
Yeah, because at that point, when you're that high up, one wrong call can get the whole party to go down.
Well, so I think that's really an interesting thing, you know, bringing that to architecture, is that polarity happens in a lot of realms.
Yeah,
but it's also in architecture, and that the money and morals are pulling further and further apart from each other.
Yeah.
And that gap is it's kind of a hard place to be. And so as architecture students, you know, my question now is like, and this is a question for myself, you know, it's like how the heck am I going to navigate that market? Because, you know, Sean's making weird noises over here. So my question is, how the heck am I going to navigate that market? Because I don't know if I've got the stones.
I mean, let's do this. If you, Landon, if you ever had to make that choice, one way or another, which one would you choose? The moral or the money?
Well, granted,
if it's for my family, it'll be the money.
Yeah, anybody that's a family-oriented person is going to do money 9 times out of 10 because they want to provide for their family. Granted, now, if taking it from like you or me, somebody that might not have a family for a while, we're going to be in it for different reasons.
I'm definitely.
I know you're in it for the money because you're a business-minded person, but me, I'm more in it for the morals. I want to be somebody that from the time I graduated, people start to talk about. That's the only reason I went to college, is I made a deal with myself that I was going to be remembered in some way or another. And, you know, that's the kind of choice you have to make within yourself, what kind of person you really are and what you want to do with your life.
And the reason why I wanted to ask that question was I don't want this discussion to antagonize anything. Because I do have a... It's... When I see the conversations that go around, especially in today's society, we love antagonizing something.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's needed. Really, you make personal decisions, and I don't think you should be ashamed for the personal decisions that you make. And like Colin said, I'm in it for the money.
And there's
it's
nothing
not that,
wrong with
it's
that.
not that I don't care about morals, but for me, my first priority is going to be always money.
Well, and like that's a logical thing, you know. It's like because that's what you and you alone want, you know. And it could be that a man with a family, you know, or if he's only
if you're
married,
forced to put in that situation.
Well, yeah, or if it could be, you know, Colin and I were talking about how someone with a family life would typically go for the money because they want to provide for family.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are exceptions to that rule. It could be that they're two architects that both want to be famous and want to. And like will bear a $300 per month apartment if that's considered cheap in some places. For us it is.
Yeah.
But you know, if they want to bear a $300 a month apartment and eating ramen every day, like that's their price for being famous. And like it just depends on the price to pay to be the elite, because sometimes you got to pay the price to get the business started up to compete with the cash cows elites. Sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet to compete.
I would love to be that cash cow elite.
Right.
Oh man.
Well, I'd love to be the other.
I would definitely say that to be an elite, those people got there through some suffering.
Oh yeah.
They definitely bit the bullet.
Yeah,
in
it doesn't matter.
occasions.
It doesn't matter if you're, like he said, cash cow elite or the attitude elite. Well, everybody gets there with some kind of difficulty.
And I think the moral elite is more difficult.
Well, yeah, it is. It has to be, because you're basically going against the frame of the society.
It's true.
Which is a standardization of money.
It's true.
Unless you're a trust fund baby.
Oh, yeah. If you're born
set.
that way.
Yeah, then you can just make exceptions all day, make moral decisions.
Yeah.
Architecturally speaking, for those of you that are just joining, but not moral speaking, like religious morals. Anyway, I think it's... You gotta clarify every once in a while, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, it's...
Well, you're rambling on, just kind of confuses people. You're like, morals, religious morals. You know what? I'm just going to quit talking.
It's probably best. That's probably best. That's why I'm the host. I'm not really the content of the conversation here. I'm just here to make sure we don't
I'm just here to look
fight.
good.
Well, yeah.
I do that, too. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah, because you know they can totally see us right now.
Bro, yeah. I'm the best looking one in the whole show. Everybody agrees with me. So it looks like we're coming up on about 38 minutes. That's probably a good podcast length, I think. We've had a good discussion for us, too.
It was juicy. Not saucy, but it was juicy.
Oh, it was plenty juicy. Yeah, that was a good discussion.
I'm ready to have a saucy conversation, get some emotion in there. But
I'm ready to get out of this room.
I'll settle for juicy.
Yeah, it's been too emotional for today. So, yeah, like we've said, you know, every other podcast that y'all have hopefully listened to, we would love for you guys to give us some feedback, comment on stuff, join in on the conversation. You know, if you guys want to comment or post, share this stuff, share it with your friends.
Like, subscribe, share.
Yeah, like we said, we want to be famous. So y'all go ahead and share it. Help us be famous.
Yeah, I want to be rich too.
Well, Sean Mosley wants to be rich.
Yeah, I want to be rich. Oh my God, I'll do anything for money.
Anyway.
Anything?
And that's
anything.
Yeah, that's Sean offering himself for money now.
If you don't want me, put down in the comment your address and how much you're willing to pay.
I believe there's a term for that, and we're not going to get into that because that's illegal.
We should probably end the podcast. So anyway, thanks for listening. Comment, post, share, subscribe.
Donate.
All those good words. Donate. Oh yeah, donate. That's a good one. And from all of us here at
Pork has got to eat somehow.
Yeah. All right. So, from all of us here at Prometheus Podcast, we thank you, and we'll see you later.
Deuces.
Bye.